Hi everyone, it's Fiona here from fionamarks.com, and I'm back with another news article that's captured my attention. So this comes from, even though I've lived here a very long time in Portugal, I still read the Australian press in the morning, and sometimes I'll read something about a celebrity and think, I wonder where that shows up in their astrology. And so the one that I have for you today relates to James Packer. Let's share the screen here. An article, James Packer's 20 Years from Hell. So for those who don't live in Australia or haven't grown up in Australia, the Packer family is a big, like media mogul empire, and James Packer would be the third generation of that empire. His father was an extremely influential businessman, but a very brutal, I don't know, rough kind of personality. And James has taken over that company. And this article is just talking about his 20 years, what he's been through. And of course, as an astrologer, one starts to think about the Vimshatari Dasha system, which breaks up your life into 120 years and allocates the major chapters to a different planet that will drive that story for a period of time. And each planet has its own um, period that it relates to, and some of them are around 20 years. So that's why, of course, your astrology brain starts working. Now, unfortunately, we don't have a birth time on the internet for James Packer, so we don't know. So this is the planets are where they were in the night sky, that we know for sure, but where the houses were, where his ascendant is, that's what we don't know. And unfortunately, that's quite important for the Vimshatari Dasha, so we can't necessarily be very clear about what's going on there. But it does seem to place him during this period. If you move through the whole day of where the birth time could be, Saturn comes up as one of the major time periods during this, as the article points out that this began in 2001. When he lost his fortune on a telecommunications venture. And Saturn is an interesting dasha to perhaps be running, because Saturn is losses and our lack and letting go of things and coming to reality, where fantasy no longer applies and just Saturn's reality takes hold. And if we notice in this chart, Saturn is actually in its least happy place in the sky in Aries, so already struggling to operate there. But it's also with Rahu, which both of these planets are pretty fear-based. So the search for security and but they deal with it in different ways. Rahu kind of encourages us to take risks. So it is afraid, but at the same time wants to just, what the hell, just do it, just take a risk, just do it. And Saturn wants to avoid risks at all costs, but being in Aries, not functioning very well, perhaps leading this person to take more risks than they should. And during this time, if we read the article, we've had a big business loss during that time. We've also had the loss of his father during that time. And then we've had some failed romance relationships, including being engaged to Mariah Carey. And what we could say perhaps about the relationships is that we do notice, regardless of whatever the birth time is, we've got Venus debilitated in, or in its least happy place, in Virgo. So perhaps we are seeing that beautiful women are going to not work well in this chart, perhaps be a source of suffering. And then we also have here, several notices that people worried that James would take his life. Later on, there's a statement that he's being treated for bipolar disorder. So again, not knowing everything about the chart, we could point to the moon as our emotions and also as our egoic mind, our personality, and being with Ketu, there is destabilization of the mind or of the emotional mind, and perhaps a wish from K2 to help the person release any emotional trauma that has come through the lifetimes, and also encouraging that lack of satisfaction in that mental emotional space. And then combined with Saturn also being in its least happy place in the sky, making it hard to be resilient and keep going. And yet what I always notice, I don't know what your opinion is, but Saturn in Aries, it does keep going. You know, it's not easy, it's not pretty, but it who would go through all of this and still be here, and yet here he is. So perhaps that's some explanation for what's been going on in James Packer's life, but maybe more important to take away is a reminder that our life does have chapters, that time evolves as it should. It unfolds in the way that is going to help us have the experiences we need to work through the indicators that are in our charts. So it's having some patience and some perseverance, resilience, fortitude, stepping back and realizing that this too shall pass, even though many of these time periods are long-ish. So one has to have patience over a period of time. All right, so that was my press clipping for the day, and I will talk to you again next time. Bye.